right. Hello, Babacus and character. Hello, my name is DM Galabond, and this is Monster Monday for Monday, November 18th, 2019. And tonight we are going to talk about a monster that is seldom seen in campaigns called the Balhannoth. Balhannoth is a bit of a tricky little creature out there. Um, and this is what it looks like. But before we talk about the Balanoff, a little bit about this show. As I said, my name is DM Galabond, and I do several other streams on this here Twitch channel. On Saturdays at noon, I do a first edition D&D game, or original D&D game called The History of D&D. And it's sort of a meta. We're building the history of a game world, and we are also um, telling the story of that game world by playing through all of the different editions of D&D, starting from original D&D from back in the 70s. Then on Sundays, I do another actual play stream called The Walker of Waterdeep at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That is a game where we cross the streams between the lore of Magic the Gathering and the lore of D&D 5th edition. It is a 5e game. Um, we do something that the Ghostbusters told us we should never do. Then on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., I also do a one mic show called Tales from the Table, where I basically recap the sessions from the Saturday and Sunday game. You can follow all of those right here on this Twitch channel. I also have a Patreon um, at patreon.com/dmgalabond. That will help me to produce more content. And I have a few goals over there and some supporter levels. You can go check that out. Tonight, I would like to say a huge thank you to Mo over at tabletopbellhop.com. If you are a fan of any kind of tabletop game, not just RPGs, but board games and all those types of things, go check out Mo at tabletopbellhop.com. He has links to more different kind of board games than you can imagine. He also has an array of links to podcasts, YouTube channels, and streamers that talk about all kinds of tabletop games. So he has added me to his list of streamers, and so I just want to give him a little shout out and a little thank you. Um, and you'll notice that on every page, I will, uh, where there's a photo, I'll put a photo credit or an image credit. This is an image of the Balhannoth from D&D Beyond, which is the 5th edition online resource and reprints all of the content from the D&D source books. And this is what the 5th edition Balhannoth looks like. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly is a Balhannoth. Um, the Balanoff is a beholderkin, and in 5e it was introduced in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. One of the things that that book did is that gave a whole family of different kinds of monsters based on um, a traditional monster out of D&D. And the beholders had a whole array of different types of beholder kin, and the Balanoth was one of those. It is native to the Shadowfell. The Shadowfell being a plane that is adjacent to the natural world, and it winds up, uh, it's where there's a lot of undead and everything, and waits to drop on its prey from the shadows above. So it'll find some uh, some fairly heavily trafficked areas, and then it will drop down and it will feed the um, on its prey. Now it has no eyes and it has only four tentacles, and those tentacles have spiked pads at the end that it uses to attack and grapple enemies. And the Balanoff also has very strong telepathic abilities, and it uses these abilities to sense the desires of prey and create convincing illusions of their greatest hopes to lure them into its trap. So, for instance, living if you were a living being that found yourself in the Shadowfell where all the undead are, you might really want to get out of the Shadowfell. And so the Balanoth could create an illusion of a portal to get out of the Shadowfell, and it would use that to sort of draw you in. And it also, because of its telepathy, can sort of um, magnify your desire for whatever it is that you want most, and use that to lure it to you. The the Balanoth, as we said, has no eyes and it has blind sight out to 500 feet. Beyond 500 feet, it can't see anything, but its telepathy will let it sense creatures up to a mile away, according to the lore that there is. And speaking of the lore, we will talk a little bit about the lore of this monster. Um, the Balanos can sense the strongest desires and locations associated with them in the minds of creatures up to a mile away. The Balanoth can transform non living material within 500 feet of it to appear to match the desire of a creature whose mind it reads, and makes the location look like a fitting place to find whatever it is the person is looking for. So Balanos thrive on the fear and despair of their victims after they attack, and especially once the victim realizes that their greatest hope was actually a false lure. Um, the Balanoth, once it grapples a creature, um, it can teleport a victim within 500 feet to an unoccupied space within 60 feet of itself. And then once it grapples a creature, it can teleport up to 60 feet from its current location. So, just like we saw last week with the Bone Claw, the Balanoth can drop down in the middle of the party, grab Bob, and then teleport 60 feet away with Bob. Or, worse yet, if the whole party is walking along and they get within 500 feet of the Balanoth can just teleport Bob from the party over to where it is, drop down on it, and then there goes poor Bob. Yes, we pick on Bob in this show a lot. I don't know why, and if your name is Bob and you're watching, I'm sorry, but uh, well, too bad. The Balanoth can also become invisible for up to 10 minutes or until they attack. So if it's not bad enough that this thing hides in the shadows on the roof of caverns, it can then hide in the shadows and become invisible too. So this is a really, really nasty monster. Um, and again, this picture is um, from Pixabay, and you know, this monster just is kind of scary to me, and I know clowns are pretty scary to a lot of people, so that's why I picked this image. All right. So, what kind of creature is the Balanoth? The creature is an aberration. And what exactly are aberrations? Um, they are a monster type where there's really no common abilities across all aberrations. Many of them do have dark vision out to 60 feet. As we said, this particular creature has blind sight out to 500 feet. And most of the aberrations are creatures from the far realms, and they have a totally alien physiology and thought patterns from creatures in the natural world or its parallel planes. Um, so that's just sort of the an image I found on Pixabay that made me think of apparitions and things from far away. So, what kind of terrain will you find the Balanoth in? Where is its natural haunt? Well, in the wild, you'll find it in the Shadowfell. So, this is the realm of undeath that borders on the material plane. In D&D cosmology, you have three planes that are sort of echoes of each other. You have the natural world in the middle, and then on one side of it, you have the Feywild, which is sort of the um, echo of purified raw nature. And then on the other side of it, you have the Shadowfell, which is sort of the echo um, of undeath on the other side. Um, so then, where else might you find the Balanoth? Curiously enough, you could find it in the Underdark because, believe it or not, the Drow will sometimes send war parties into the Shadowfell to try to capture a young Balanoth, and then they bring that back to the Underdark and they place it as a sentinel in areas where they think people should not be going. And worst of all, they like to put it in an otherwise unguarded tunnel where they keep slaves. So they will they will have a bunch of slaves and there'll just be this open tunnel that looks like the slaves can get out. But little known to the slaves, there's actually a Balanoth that guards that tunnel. And so you can imagine slaves that are captives of the Drow and want to try to get away. Well, freedom is the most desperate thing that they want, and a Balanoth would just have a field day in an environment like that. So if you didn't think the Drow were really, really, really cold-hearted, nasty people, this is the kind of thing they will do to their slaves. So this kind of gives you an idea of what you can do, not only with a Balanoff in a campaign, but sort of how you can flavor the just the sheer uh, the sheer bloody sadistic nature of Drow that you may use in your campaign. So now one of the things I like to do every week is I like to talk about the flavor features, and the flavor features are non-mechanical features of the monster. So, as we said, it uses a telepathic lure. It will reach out and scan the minds of people within range, and it will then use what it senses from their desires to create an illusion that is particularly alluring to its victims. It also is a pure malevolent evil. It has a desire to deceive its victims and then spring the full terror of that deception on them at the moment they attack. And while they are, literally chewing their victims to death, grappled in those, spiny arms that they have. Um, it understands deep speech and it has telepathy out to a mile. So it can communicate telepathically. It cannot talk, but it does understand deep speech if that is spoken in its vicinity. Um, and let's see. Yeah, there goes poor Bob. So mechanical features of the monster. Now, this is where you get sort of more into talking about the stat blocks. What makes the Balanoth tick? Well, in 5th edition, it's a CR11 monster, 17 AC, 114 hit points, and it's immune to blindness. Now, this creature also has legendary resistance 2 times per day. And what legendary resistance means is that means that if the Balanoth is forced to make a saving throw and it fails its saving throw, it can just decide, no, I actually didn't fail that. I actually made that save. And it can do that twice per day. Um, there are a lot of really super powerful creatures that can do that as many as 3 times a day. But any creature that has legendary resistance is really, can really mess with a big attack from the adventurers in the party. Now, different from the legendary resistance, it also has 3 legendary actions. And what a legendary action is that means it's an action that the creature can take at the end of another creature's turn during the round. So it gets to act on its round or on its turn. And then at the end of 3 other turns during the round, it can also take an action. And those 3 actions are a bite attack, a teleportation up to 60 feet, or vanishing, meaning it becomes invisible. And every round, those legendary actions refresh. So it can do all of those um, every round if it wants to. Now, this creature, by its nature, it also has a lair. And you start to know you're dealing with pretty powerful enemies anytime you see that something has a lair action. And as a lair action, this creature can warp reality. So, up to 500 square feet, it can create the illusion of a target creature's greatest desire. So, for instance, if a target creature wants to find a way out of the Shadowfell, it can create the illusion that there would be a portal or a gateway to get out to their home plane. And all creatures within 1 mile of the Balhanoth's lair get the sensation of being near their greatest desire. And the closer they get to the Balhanoth, the more that feeling intensifies. So you can imagine going back to the Drow's usage. If they put one of these right outside of a slave pen, just the sheer mental torture day in and day out for those slaves that they feel like they're so close to what they really want, which is freedom and getting away from the drow. Um, just just really kind of rubs in how sadistic those guys are and how terrible this creature is in what it does. So now let's talk a little bit about the creature's attacks and its special abilities. So it has 2 different attack modes that it can use on its turn. The first one is a bite and 2 tentacle attacks. So the bite does 4d10 plus 3 damage, and each tentacle does 2d6 plus 3 damage. Now, the other mode is that it can use 4 tentacle attacks. Again, each one doing 2d6 plus 3. And if it uses the 4 tentacle attacks, it will grapple a creature with all 4 of those. And then at the end of its attack, it gets to teleport away up to 60 feet away, carrying its grappled victim with it. Um, Now, it cannot use tentacle attacks or target other creatures while it has a grappled victim. So, the good news for the rest of the party is once it puts all 4 of its tentacles on poor Bob, it can't attack anybody else. So, as long as you send Bob out there to get attacked, then your character is safe. It's just like being out with your friend in the woods with with an angry bear. You don't have to run faster than the bear. You just have to run faster than your friend. Um, and so this is yeah. I didn't change the image from last time. I couldn't think of a really good image for the tentacle attack. So I just stuck with this one. Now, what about the Balanoff and other editions? We said that in 5th edition it was introduced as part of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, but has this guy appeared in any other editions, you ask? And I am here to tell you the answer is yes. It made its first appearance in the 3.5 edition in the Monster Manual 4. Now you know that an edition of D&D stayed around for a long, long time if they can get around to publishing a fourth monster manual for that same edition. So it took them the fourth time around before they came up with this guy. In that particular edition, it was a CR10 monster. It had an AC of 21 and it had 147 hit points. But this one also had a few different abilities. It had an ability called a dimensional lock. Basically, um, once it grappled a creature, it prevented that creature from being able to teleport away. So if you were somebody that normally had the ability to teleport and you say, "Oh, nothing can ever grapple me because I can just teleport away." Not from this thing. Once it grapples you, hey, your teleportation doesn't work. It also has an anti magic field within its grapple, so it nullifies all magical effects. So if you had a stone skin on, no, you don't, not while you're grappled. If you have magic armor, not while you're grappled. If you got a nice big magic sword, not while you're grappled. Uh, this thing just nullifies all of that against its victims. Now, it had damage resistance 15 slash magic. And what that meant in 3.5 is that meant that unless you had a magic weapon, which obviously anybody grappled didn't have a magic weapon, it ignores the first 15 points of any damage that you do to it. So you would have to use your very nice non magical sword and hit it for at least 16 points of damage to do a single point of damage to the creature. Um, so that was its first iteration. Um, and I don't have an image for the 3.5 edition because I do not have the Monster Manual for. Now, this will be a plug for the Patreon I talked about. Um, the more patrons I can pick up and the more support I can get, that means I can buy more of these source books and then I can mine them for more images that we can put in Monster Monday and some of my other shows. So everybody, if you want to see more images like that, just go ahead and sign up for the Patreon, please. Um, and this again is an image uh, out of Pixabay. Okay, now in fourth edition, the Balanoth appeared there, and this was how it was depicted in fourth edition. Um, it was in the regular monster manual, the first monster manual, and it was a level 13 elite lurker. So again, we've talked about how with 4E they assigned all of these roles basically to the monster, just like the character classes had the leader, the defender, the striker, and then I think there was like one other role that they had for characters. All the monsters had different roles too, and this one was a lurker and it was elite, which meant that it was the top of the food chain in any encounter. It had plus 18 to its initiative, plus 16 to its perception, plus 19 to its stealth, had an AC of 28 and 216 hit points. Now, if you've never played fourth edition, while the AC looks like it's really out there, that had a completely different scale in terms of the ACs. As you got higher and higher in level, everybody's ACs just got insane because most of your stats and abilities had not only the occasional increases you could do when you got to certain levels, but every stat and every skill also raised um, by half your level. So you would get an automatic, when you got to sixth level, you'd get an automatic +3 to everything across the board just because it was half of your sixth level. And that just kept going up and up and up and up. And so, therefore, since the characters were doing all of that, the creep had to be on the other side with the monsters. They had to get tougher and tougher and beefier and beefier every time you went to another level. So this thing had tentacle attacks, and each tentacle would do 1d8 plus 9 damage. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it deals an extra 2d8 damage to any creature that it has combat advantage against. And combat advantage was a specific mechanic in fourth edition. It had a reality shift, which was a teleport of up to 10 squares, and squares were 5 foot. So that's a 50-foot teleport. And it gains combat advantage against any adjacent creature at the end of its teleport. So you can kind of see how this guy's MO would work. He would teleport right next to you, attack you with a tentacle, and if he hit, he would automatically get not 1d8 plus 9, he'd get 3d8 plus 9 with each tentacle because he gained combat advantage against you. And then it can also at will turn invisible until the end of its next turn. So you just go and you attack something, and then boop, you blink out, and that makes it harder for other enemies to hit you. So now let's talk about how to use the Balanoff in campaigns. Um, Pretty obviously, great to use this against a party that's trapped in the Shadowfell and seeking a way home. I mean, just give them this sense of hope that, oh, hey, it feels like we're getting closer and closer to a way out. And yeah, really, you're just getting closer and closer to the Balanoff. That's going to have some fun with you when you get there. Um, Balanoff can lure the party with their desire and then attack them. You can also use it in the Underdark, particularly if your mission is to go and try to rescue prisoners of the Drow. So maybe the party thinks they have found a way to get to where the Drow are holding their prisoners, and they might indeed find a route there that's not guarded by Drow, but it might be guarded by one of these guys. And so, and then maybe some other nasty traps that the Drow would set up. So that's another way you could use this. Um, and they obviously would have to get past the Balana guard on the tunnel leading to the prisoner's cells. And once again, this is our fifth edition Balanoth from D&D Beyond. And now we can talk a little bit about reskinning the monster. And I think it's kind of obvious from the way the monster looks. One of the things that you could do with this, it doesn't have any special damage types, so that in some ways opens it up. You don't have to worry about things doing a special kind of damage. It's all just physical damage that it does to you. But it has those cool teleportation and illusion abilities. So maybe you could reskin this as any kind of monster that could grapple and teleport, like perhaps, um, you know, and then obviously your environment would provide you ideas on the kind of creature. So, for instance, if you were in an aquatic adventure, maybe you could reskin this as some kind of giant awakened jellyfish. So imagine a jellyfish that has the powers of illusion, teleportation, and telepathy, that it could go and it could attack people. Um, that maybe is something out of some sort of elemental plane of water. You might find something like that, or you might find it in some deep ocean on an alien world, or you could find something of uh, those. Okay, so Gauntlet says, or an ammonite, it disguises itself as a normal coral formation and then shoots out tentacles and teleports to a different coral layer. Ooh, and an enemy, yes. That's probably what it's probably what was meant by that. Um, yeah, so it can swim. Okay, so um, what other thoughts do you have? I had a little bit of a hard time thinking of other ways you could reskin this monster. What are some other thoughts that you have um, on the um, Balanoth and what you could do with it? How might you reskin this creature? Any ideas? Any ideas from the chat room? Okay, could be a squid-like creature, yeah. And you know, squids don't necessarily have to be, or squid-like creatures don't necessarily have to be in the water. You could have a squid-like creature in the elemental plane of air. Um, you could, I suppose, you could even have like a squid-like creature that tunnels through the earth. You know, they have the land sharks, the bullets, that tunnel through the earth. So why not having a squid-like thing that tunnels through the elemental plane of earth? That could be that. Could be a mimic that gains super magic powers. Yes. Yeah, yeah, mimics. That's all kinds of possibilities with mimics since they are shape changers and can yeah, and this would be the big mama mimic. So maybe you had oh, a meaner version of a roper. There you go. I like that, Pete. The idea where you could take a roper and change it into reskin this to look like a roper and have it do its thing to other people. I forget off the top of my head whether ropers do any kind of special damage or not. Um, and if they don't, then that would be perfect. Um, and of course, even if they do, people might look at it and say, "Uh oh, we think it's a roper," and then when it exhibits these other capabilities, like, "Oh, oh, it's worse than a roper," and then you realize, "Oh, but it doesn't do any special damage." Okay, it just bites really hard. You put this in an encounter with a demon in a mirror. Ooh, keeps popping out of the mirror. It grabs and pops. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. A mutated star-nosed mole. There you go. See, I like this. You guys are thinking of a lot of different ideas. Um, I am going to have to start writing these down and see if maybe in Chult there might be something there might be something that could that could reach out um, and bite everybody. Uh, oh, oh man, we got to stop giving them ideas. Okay, it's meant to show simulations of things. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Uh, yes, the mirror was meant to show you things that you want, and then it's corrupted by a dynamic power. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh no, that's not what you were talking about. Oh, a computer virus. Ooh. Ooh, okay. So yeah, you could use this in a futuristic type of game. Um, there are there are a surprising number of D&D streams and D&D podcasts where they take 5th edition rules and then set it in a futuristic setting and just the basic rule set um, swapping out your standard fantasy weapons for modern or futuristic weapons. It just works fine. Okay. Could be a BBE of an internet campaign. Yeah, that's almost. There was a movie back in the day. It was a really bad horror movie. Um, but there, and I forget what the name of it was called. It even had kind of a silly name, if I remember. And it was about some serial killer who somehow got, I think he got killed by electrocution, and then somehow he got into the electric grid, and it was right around the beginning of the time that computers were first, universities were first getting some, uh, you know, internet labs and things like that, where you could go and use the old, what was it? What was the first browser that was out there? That was, yeah, Ghost in the Machine. Okay, that might be it. Yes, that was the one. So, sections of the server are safe. What's corrupted? Have a campaign where these guys are aliens that came to the world meteor and crashes in water deep. Ooh, and they're hungry. They've been starving in space forever, and now they're loose. Oh, well, Gaunty, I think yeah, you have some good ideas there. Yeah, that is those are some very good ideas. All right. Well, um like to torment my players. Okay. Well, I think that this has been a very good discussion. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Um, and thank you for the great conversation and the ideas. And I will go ahead and shut off the stream in just a moment, but not before. Oh, you are welcome, Gonti. I'm glad to do Monster Monday, and I'm glad that people are enjoying this show. Before I end the stream, I will just sign off by saying, um, have a great week and watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everyone.